Our first guest is Marina Fernandez-Ruz with the paper A Theoretical Approach to the Complex Chemical Evolution of Phosphorus in the Interstellar Medium. Exciting. So I see Marina is already with us, so I'm giving you the floor. Adding you right now. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So is the audio okay?
Yes, it is. Go ahead.
It's okay. Am I sharing my screen now?
No, you're not sharing your screen right now. Let me see if I can help you with that somehow.
Oh, yeah, I know where.
Yep. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start.
Go ahead.
So, well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my work here. This work has been done at the Astrobiology Center with my PhD advisor, Jacobo Aguirre, and in collaboration with astrochemist Izaskun Jiménez Serra. So the topic is a theoretical approach to the complex chemical evolution of phosphorus in the interstellar medium. So as an introduction, let me explain you why phosphorus is a key element for life. Well, in fact, it was mentioned by Alan Smuda in a nice talk in the previous session. So I'm going to go fast with this, but basically phosphorus is present in this molecule that is a phosphate group, and this phosphate group is present in many important biomolecules, such as the phospholipids of the cell membrane, the DNA and RNA, and also in ATP, the energetic molecule. So also, these are the molecules containing phosphorus that have been detected so far outside Earth, so with radio telescopes. So they have been identified in circumstellar envelopes of stars, and these two, which are phosphorus monoxide and phosphorus mononitride, have been observed also in molecular clouds and comets, and also in higher abundances. So in this work, we are going to focus on these two. Well, we are going to call them PO and PM for simplicity only. So this is the scenario. Phosphorus simple molecules are formed in the interstellar medium, more precisely in molecular clouds. And it is believed that they fell into the early Earth inside asteroids and comets, mostly during the late heavy bombardment that took place around 4,000 million years ago, and became part of prebiotic chemistry, which is the chemistry that finally leads to the origin of life. And well, this is an important topic that was also covered in the plenary session yesterday about the role of comets and asteroids in astrobiology. So it is very important because they can deliver some molecules and elements into the Earth. So what we are going to address is the interstellar phosphorus problem, which is about the two molecules that I said before, PO and PM. So if we calculate the ratio between their abundances, so that is PO divided by PM, observational results show that it takes values between 1 to 5, and even more in comets. So this means that PO is more abundant than PM. However, astrochemical models show the opposite thing, show that PM is more abundant than PO. And we believe that part of the problem comes from the inputs of the astrochemical models, because if the inputs are wrong or are inaccurate, the results of the model will be also inaccurate. So the two main inputs are the reactions rate coefficients, K, that is the constant, so it's basically the velocity of a reaction. And also there are great uncertainties in the grain surface reactions. So in our work at the Astrobiology Center, we studied both things, but in this presentation, I'm going to focus on the reactions rate coefficients. So our goal is then to understand the formation of these two molecules, PO and PM, in the interstellar medium in terms of the reaction rate coefficients. And how? Well, I'm going to explain a model that we developed that is simpler. So it's simpler from existing astrochemical models, but this simplicity allows us to address it mathematically, as you will see in a moment. So I'm going to explain how is the astrochemical model. So these are the two scenarios that we are modeling. On the left-hand side, we have the dark cloud cores, which have very low temperatures, about 10 Kelvin. And on the right-hand side, we have hot cores, which have temperatures from 100 to 300. And in both cases, the age is up to 1 million years in the simulation. So this is the starting point of our model. We have a set of 14 chemical reactions. They all contain phosphorus and neutral molecules. And they all have a rate coefficient. So the rate coefficient that I said before is basically the velocity of the reaction. They come from these databases called KIDA and UMIST. And the problem is that they are just estimations. They are very uncertain. We don't really know the exact value. There is one exception, that is the 6, that was calculated by Juan García de la Concepción and collaborators at our center, and they calculated it with theoretical methods. But the rest of them haven't been calculated or haven't been measured experimentally. So this is the main issue. So we have the set of reactions and the initial abundances of all the chemical species involved. So with this, we can compute a system of 17 ordinary differential equations. So this system has the information of the abundances evolutions. The thing is, we need to solve it. So in our work, we were able to solve it not only numerically, but also analytically under certain assumptions that I'm going to explain next. So as a result, first, I need to explain how do we create the network. So for example, this is a reaction. The chemical species are the nodes, and we link from reactants to products. So from reactants to products, there is a link. And we also have another dashed line as a link between the reactants. So if we do this with all the chemical reactions, we have this phosphorus chemistry network with the element with phosphorus and all the interactions. So as you can see, they are classified in 3 groups. So we have the abundant species and the scarce species according to a threshold. So if the initial abundance is above the threshold, we say that it's abundant, so it's a blue, and below the threshold, we have the scarce species. Well, the non-interacting are just the ones that the initial abundance is not in the system of ordinary differential equations. So we don't really need the initial abundance, so they are actually not classified. We are not interested in the initial abundance. So the key point of the work is that we can consider that the abundant species are constant, because we demonstrated mathematically that the error that we make under this assumption is very low. So with this assumption, we can obtain this formula for these 7 chemical species containing phosphorus. So this formula accounts for the abundance of each of the chemical species with the index I, and the index corresponds to any one of these small network at any time and any temperature. So in the formula, we have just constants that are C and R that depend on the parameters of the model. So this is a very powerful tool because we can calculate the abundances at any time. So in this plot, this is just an example for 100 Kelvin of the abundances along 1 million years. That is the age of the cloud. So we can see how the abundances are changing. So in the blue line, we have a numerical result. So it's just an evolution that was calculated with a numerical solver. So it was calculated under no assumptions, so just an exact solution. But on the red dashed line, we have the theoretical solution, which was calculated with the formula that I presented before. So we actually see that the curves are mainly equivalent, so the approximation is actually working. And well, here I'm plotting the PO-PN ratio that I showed you before. That is a quantity of interest in astrochemistry. And we can see that at the end of the time, the values it takes values between 4 to 6, which pretty agrees with observational results. So it's nice. So far I have explained how the model works. So we have the numerical results and the theoretical results. So the thing is, a numerical simulation takes much more time than a theoretical. So with our formula, we can calculate as much simulations as we want. So we are going to use it to address the problem of the uncertainties on the rate coefficients. So we can calculate the abundances of PO and PN, which are the molecules that we are interested in, changing the rate coefficients. So we can assess how the changes in the rate coefficients affect the abundances of PO and PN. So with this, first, we are going to identify which are the target reactions that are affecting most the outcome of the system, and then it is going to be used to reduce the uncertainties. So this is exactly what we are doing here. So along the x-axis, we have any of the chemical reactions of our system with the rate coefficients, and we are calculating its correlation with the abundances of PO in blue, PN in red, and the ratio in yellow. And it is calculated for two temperatures because the behavior is slightly different. So we can see that some of them do not really affect the abundances of PO and PN. They are like K5, for example, is completely negligible. However, some others, like K2, are really impacting the abundance of PO and PN and the ratio. So with this method, we can filter which are the most important reactions for the system. So with this, we are obtaining that the second, the 3, 4, 7, 10, and 12, these are the reactions that we consider that are most relevant for the system and more precisely for PO and PN. So with this, we are going to use Bayesian methods to constrain their values to know more about them, because if you remember, the values that we have are very inaccurate. So we are going to use Bayesian methods to constrain their values. So here we have Thomas Bayes with his famous theorem, and I combine it with observational results from these astronomical sources that are well known in astronomy. So these are observational data and our model. So combining these three things, we can obtain the so-called posterior probability distributions. If you are not very familiar with Bayesian methods, you can ask me in the chat, because I'm going to explain just briefly this one. So for example, this curve, we have in the dashed line the original value. So it was the value that was obtained from the database. And Bayesian inference provides us the curve of probability of the values that are more probable. So in this case, the Bayesian methods are telling us that the rate coefficient for this reaction, the real one, might be slightly higher than the value that we are using in the database. So, well, that's everything I wanted to tell you. So thank you. Let me read the take-home messages. So in astrobiology, we have developed a theoretical model that describes the dynamics of phosphorus chemistry in molecular clouds. So with this, we aim to understand how the reaction rate coefficients, the K, or also the velocity, which are highly uncertain, affect the formation of target molecules PO and PN. In addition, our model is much simpler than existing astrochemical models, which allows us to obtain explicit equations of the abundances evolution of the chemical species involved. So that was the formula that I presented before. And these evolution equations have been necessary to develop deep study on how the parameters of the model affect the abundances of our target molecules PO and PN. We focused on the reaction rate coefficients showing that the dynamics is governed by a few numbers of reactions. So we saw in the correlations that some of them were practically zero, while others were very high. And lastly, better estimations of target reaction rate coefficients would improve significantly the results of existing astrochemical models. Bayesian statistics allows us to combine observed data and our model to constrain the values of the rate coefficients. And that was it. Thank you everyone for being here. And if you have any question, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you for this presentation. That was really fascinating, and the structure just perfect. You should really do that for a living. We have a question on the chat. How is the network of reactions made? Can you see that question?
Yeah. Let me go back to this slide with the example. So here we have just one reaction. So the nodes are the chemical species, and we put a directed link, like is the arrow, from the reactants to the products. So every reactant is linked to every product of the reaction. And then we link also the two reactants, because this is to represent that the two reactants are needed for the reaction to occur. So with that, we have the chemical network, joining all the chemical reactions. I don't know if it was clear.
It was clear for me. I hope it was clear for the person who asked the question. Yeah. Okay, so you still have 4 minutes. Is there anything you would like to highlight or say or something like that? We have another question, so you will be able to answer that, I think.
Oh yeah, if I compare the results of my calculation with observed abundances of phosphorus in space. Yeah, what we did is after Bayesian inference, we compared the abundances obtained with our Bayesian methods to the observed, and we saw that they were closer to the observed than the values before Bayesian inference. So with Bayesian inference, we actually changed the reaction rate coefficients values. So the new values were more in agreement with observation. That's what we observed.
Okay, so thank you very much for that presentation and for answering the questions.